The blackened sky above Manhattan split open, revealing a colossal, shimmering vessel. Its surface pulsed like liquid mercury, reflecting fractured images of the city below. People froze mid-stride, their faces a mix of awe and terror. A deafening hum rolled through the air, sending birds scattering and shattering windows in a cacophony of chaos. Then, the vessel spoke. A single, resonant voice reverberated across the globe. "Humans of Earth, we bring you a challenge. Our warrior, Grakthar, stands undefeated across the stars. Choose your champion. Prove your worth, or your world will fall." Inside the underground command center of the United Nations Defense Coalition, UNDC, tension crackled like static electricity. The room was a swirl of activity. Monitors displayed live feeds of the alien ship hovering over New York, analysts barked into headsets, and generals conferred in hushed, urgent tones. Seated at the head of the table, General Marcus Grant, his grizzled face etched with lines of experience, slammed his fist against the polished surface. "This isn't a negotiation. We sent Colonel Briggs. He's trained, disciplined, and our best chance." A snort echoed from the back of the room. "Yeah, if you want to bore the aliens to death," came the sardonic voice of Captain Jax Tanner. Leaning casually against the wall, his arms crossed and a perpetual smirk on his face, Jax was the antithesis of protocol. His dark hair was disheveled, and his flight jacket bore more patches than regulations allowed. General Grant's glare could have melted steel. "Tanner, this isn't a joke." Jax straightened, strolling to the table with a swagger that exuded confidence, or recklessness, depending on the observer. "Look, I'm sure Briggs is a fine soldier. But this isn't about who's the most disciplined or who can recite the most rules. This is about who can think 3 steps ahead while playing 2 steps sideways." Dr. Elena Rivers, the UNDC's lead scientist, adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Jax has a point," she said reluctantly. "Based on what we know about the aliens, they value strategy and adaptability as much as brute strength. Their warrior, Grakthar, has defeated countless opponents because they all followed predictable patterns. We need someone unconventional." General Grant scoffed. "Unconventional? Tanner is a loose cannon. He's reckless, insubordinate, and alive," Jax interrupted, his voice calm but cutting. "Which is more than can be said for a lot of your perfect soldiers." The decision was made within the hour. As Jax suited up in the sterile confines of the prep room, Elena entered, a tablet clutched in her hands. She hesitated before speaking. "You don't make this easy, you know. Wouldn't want to ruin my reputation," Jax quipped, strapping a knife to his thigh. Her lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Grakthar isn't just strong. He's fast, calculated, and utterly merciless. You'll be fighting in an arena designed to adapt to your every move. One wrong step, and I'm toast." "Got it," Jax finished. He turned to face her, his expression surprisingly serious. "Look, I know I'm not what you wanted. But I'm what you've got. And I promise you, I'm not going down without giving that alien bastard something to remember." For a moment, Elena said nothing. Then, she handed him a small device. "This might even the odds. It's an adaptive neural interface. Lets you sync with the arena's AI. It's experimental, but—" Jax grinned, tucking the device into his gear. "Experimental's my middle name." Hours later, Jax stood beneath the looming shadow of the alien vessel, the world watching through countless cameras and live streams. The air was thick with tension, every breath feeling like it might be the last. As a beam of light engulfed him, lifting him into the ship, he gave the crowd a 2-finger salute. Inside, the arena was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Walls of shifting energy spiraled into infinity, the floor constantly morphing under his feet. Across from him, Grakthar loomed, a mountain of muscle and armor, his glowing eyes fixed on Jax with cold disdain. The alien warrior's voice was deep and guttural. "Is this your champion? A jest, surely." Jax tilted his head, a lazy smile playing on his lips. "Oh, I'm a joke, all right. But I'm the kind that kills." The arena roared to life. Platforms rose and fell, molten rivers flowed beneath precarious bridges, and gravity itself seemed to twist unpredictably. Grakthar lunged, his movements a blur. Jax barely dodged, his instincts sharper than his smirk let on. "Nice try, big guy," Jax taunted, darting to higher ground. "But you'll have to do better than that." As the first clash echoed through the arena, Jax felt adrenaline surging through his veins. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a chance to show the universe what humanity was made of. And if there was one thing Jax Tanner excelled at, it was proving people wrong. The chapter ended with a metallic clang as Grakthar's weapon narrowly missed Jax, embedding itself in the platform with a deafening crack. "You're quick, human," Grakthar rumbled, his voice filled with grudging respect. "But speed alone won't save you." Jax laughed, even as sweat dripped down his face. "Good thing I've got a few tricks up my sleeve, then." The world held its breath as the battle began in earnest. The air in the arena crackled with energy as the crowd of alien spectators roared, their guttural chants vibrating through the ever-shifting walls. Jax Tanner crouched low, his boots skidding across the iridescent surface as Grakthar bore down on him like an unstoppable freight train. The alien warrior's massive blade, crackling with plasma energy, swept in a wide arc. Jax ducked just in time, the weapon slicing through the air with a hiss that singed his hair. "Not bad, big guy," Jax panted, scrambling to his feet. "But you're gonna have to try harder if you want to make me sweat." Grakthar straightened, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Your arrogance will be your undoing, human." Jax smirked, but his mind raced. Every step, every move had to count. The arena was alive, its terrain shifting unpredictably. Platforms rose and fell without warning, molten rivers bubbled dangerously close, and gravity itself seemed to twist and fluctuate. Jax couldn't rely on brute strength or traditional tactics, not against an opponent like this, not in a battlefield that actively worked against him. From a hidden observation chamber high above the arena, Dr. Elena Rivers watched the battle unfold, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the console. The neural interface she had given Jax was active, feeding her data on the arena's mechanics and Jax's vitals. The readings weren't promising. "His heart rate is spiking," an analyst muttered. "Adrenaline's off the charts. He can't keep this up." "He has to," Elena snapped, her eyes never leaving the screen. General Grant stood behind her, arms crossed and expression grim. "This is why we should have sent Briggs. Discipline over case." Elena turned sharply. "Briggs would have been dead the moment the arena shifted. Jax is unpredictable, and that's the only thing keeping him alive right now." The general's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Back in the arena, Jax's mind raced as he analyzed his surroundings. The shifting platforms and molten rivers weren't random, they followed a pattern, albeit a complex one. He activated the neural interface, feeling a sharp jolt as the device synced with his thoughts. Suddenly, the arena's chaos seemed less overwhelming. He could sense the rhythm of its movements, the subtle cues that signaled a platform's rise or fall. Grakthar lunged again, his blade carving through a nearby column, sending shards of energy scattering like glass. Jax leapt onto a rising platform, using its momentum to propel himself over the alien's head. He landed behind Grakthar, rolling to absorb the impact. "Come on, buddy, keep up!" Jax taunted, his voice laced with mock cheer. "Or is this your first time dancing?" Grakthar roared, his frustration evident. The alien's strength was undeniable, but Jax's agility and wit were starting to wear him down. Each miss, each wasted swing, chipped away at the warrior's confidence. As the battle raged, the alien spectators began to shift in their seats, their chants softening into murmurs. They had expected a quick, decisive victory. Instead, they were witnessing something extraordinary, a human not just surviving but holding his own against their greatest champion. In the observation chamber, Elena noticed the change. "They're starting to doubt him," she said quietly. Grant frowned. "Grakthar?" "No," Elena replied, her voice tinged with hope. "Jax." Grakthar paused, his chest heaving as he stared at Jax. "You fight with dishonor," he growled. "No strategy. No discipline. Yeah, well, Jax replied, brushing dust off his jacket. We humans have a saying, all's fair in love and war. And buddy, I'm not here to make friends. With that, Jax activated the neural interface again, focusing on a series of platforms near the arena's edge. They were moving in a sequence he could exploit, a makeshift trap. He just needed to lure Grakthar into position. Hey, Grakthar! Jax shouted, waving his arms theatrically. Over here! Or are you too scared to play with the big boys? The alien warrior roared and charged, his blade glowing brighter as he poured all his energy into a final, devastating strike. Jax waited until the last possible second before diving to the side. Grakthar's momentum carried him forward, onto a platform that suddenly dropped into a molten chasm below. For a moment, it seemed as though the alien would fall, but he caught himself, his massive hands gripping the edge of the platform. The crowd gasped, their chants turning to stunned silence. Jax approached cautiously, standing just out of reach. Need a hand? He asked, his tone almost playful. Grakthar's glowing eyes met Jax's, and for a moment, something shifted. The contempt and disdain were gone, replaced by something deeper, respect. I underestimated you, human, Grakthar said, his voice low and steady. You are more than you appear. Jax grinned. And you're not half bad yourself. But let's call it a draw, huh? I like my enemies alive, it makes the victory sweeter. With a groan, Jax extended his hand. Grakthar hesitated, then took it. The arena shifted again, raising both warriors back to solid ground. The crowd erupted, their cheers echoing through the chamber. In the observation chamber, Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He did it, she whispered. Grant shook his head, a reluctant smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. That lunatic actually did it. The arena's glow dimmed, leaving a hushed silence in its wake. The crowd's cheers had dwindled to murmurs, a wave of uncertainty rippling through the alien spectators. Jax Tanner, still catching his breath, exchanged a glance with Grakthar. The tension between them had shifted, less adversarial, more collaborative. You fought well, human, Grakthar rumbled, his voice carrying an edge of grudging respect. The towering warrior crossed his arms, the faint shimmer of his armor catching the dim light. But the trial is not yet over. Jax raised an eyebrow, leaning on his knees as he tried to slow his racing heart. You mean there's more? Don't tell me I've got to arm wrestle your mom next. Grakthar didn't laugh, but his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. The arena chooses its victor, not the audience. Prepare yourself. Before Jax could reply, the floor beneath them rumbled, its shifting panels grinding together in a cacophony of sound. The arena's walls began to pulse with an ominous red light, casting long, jagged shadows that danced like specters across the combatants. A low, mechanical hum grew steadily louder, filling the air with an oppressive energy. From the observation chamber, Dr. Elena Rivers bolted upright. Something's wrong, she said, her voice sharp and clipped. Her fingers danced over the console, pulling up streams of data from the neural interface. The arena, it's changing. This wasn't part of the original design. General Grant frowned, stepping closer to the screen. Changing how? Elena's brow furrowed as she analyzed the chaotic readouts. It's adapting. The AI controlling the arena must have detected a draw, and now it's escalating the challenge. Jax and Grakthar might be facing something neither of them is prepared for. Prepared for? Grant's voice was incredulous. What could be worse than what they just went through? Elena's fingers paused over the keyboard. Something we haven't seen before. In the arena, Jax barely managed to steady himself as the ground split apart, revealing a massive chasm that glowed with molten heat. The platforms he and Grakthar stood on began to rise, rotating slowly as if pulled by invisible strings. The once chaotic battlefield was transforming into a series of narrow walkways suspended over an abyss, with the platforms shrinking and reshaping into precarious ledges. Well, this is cozy, Jax muttered, glancing at the towering warrior across the gap. Any chance we can call it a day? Grakthar's gaze was fixed on the shifting arena. The arena is testing us, he said, his tone grim. It seeks a victor. We must survive. Great. Love a good existential death trap, Jax quipped. But beneath the sarcasm, his mind was already working. The platform's movements were erratic but not entirely random. If he could find a pattern. His thoughts were interrupted by a new sound, low, guttural growls emanating from the shadows. Jax turned, his pulse quickening as sleek, predatory shapes emerged from the darkness. Their eyes glowed an unearthly green, their movements fluid and deadly. Didn't realize we were inviting company, Jax said, his voice tight. He drew the knife strapped to his thigh, its blade glinting faintly in the red light. You know these guys? Grakthar nodded, his expression dark. Arena wraiths. They hunt those who linger. Well, that's just fantastic, Jax muttered, rolling his shoulders. Guess it's time for some cardio. The wraiths moved as one, their sleek forms darting across the shrinking platforms with terrifying speed. Jax barely dodged the first attack, a razor-sharp claw missing his face by inches. He countered with a quick slash of his knife, the blade meeting resistance as it grazed the creature's flank. The wraith shrieked, recoiling, but it wasn't enough to stop it. Grakthar, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of power, his massive blade carving through the wraiths with precision and force. But for every wraith that fell, two more seemed to take its place. Any bright ideas? Jax shouted over the cacophony of snarls and clashing steel. Grakthar didn't reply immediately, his focus locked on the fight. But then his voice boomed over the chaos. The arena seeks our cooperation. It will not end until we prove ourselves worthy, together. Jax blinked, narrowly dodging another swipe. You mean we're supposed to work as a team? Now you're just making things weird. But even as he joked, Jax realized Grakthar was right. The arena wasn't just testing their strength, it was testing their ability to adapt, to find common ground despite their differences. Up in the observation chamber, Elena's eyes widened as the arena's data feed began to stabilize. The wraiths, they're a distraction, she said aloud, her voice tinged with realization. The arena is forcing them to rely on each other. Grant crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. And you think Jax is capable of that? Elena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the screen as Jax and Grakthar exchanged a brief nod, a silent agreement. If anyone can figure it out, she said finally, it's him. Back in the arena, Jax and Grakthar fell into an uneasy rhythm. Jax's agility and speed complemented Grakthar's brute strength, the two warriors covering each other's weaknesses as they fought off the relentless wraiths. Not bad for a big guy, Jax called, narrowly avoiding a swipe as he rolled onto a higher platform. You ever think about trying out for the NFL? Grakthar didn't respond, his focus unbroken as he cleaved through another wraith. But there was a glint in his eyes that almost looked like amusement. The final wraith fell with a guttural scream, its form dissolving into the red light. The arena fell silent once more, the platform stabilizing as the ominous hum faded. Jax and Grakthar stood back to back, their chests heaving, their weapons dripping with an otherworldly substance. Jax broke the silence. So we're still alive. That's a win, right? Grakthar turned, his expression unreadable. The arena is not yet finished. Before Jax could reply, the platforms began to rise again, the air around them growing colder. A new sound filled the arena, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. Jax sighed, rolling his neck. Of course it's not over. Wouldn't want things to get boring. The chapter ended with the two warriors staring into the shifting void above them, the tension thick enough to cut. Whatever was coming next, it would be their ultimate test. The cold seeped into Jax Tanner's bones as the arena's temperature plummeted, each breath visible in the icy air. The walls shimmered with an eerie, crystalline sheen, refracting the dim red light into a kaleidoscope of color. The faint hum that had signaled the arena's transformations before was now a deep, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of a slumbering beast. What now? Jax muttered, his voice muffled by the freezing air. He glanced at Grakthar, whose broad shoulders tensed as he scanned their surroundings. The alien warrior's voice rumbled low and cautious. The arena has entered its final phase. This will not be like the others. Great, Jax quipped, flexing his fingers to keep them warm. Because fighting killer wraiths on moving platforms was a walk in the park. But even as he joked, Jax couldn't shake the sense of impending doom. The air felt heavier, oppressive, as if the arena itself was alive and watching. Above the battlefield, Dr. Elena Rivers stared at the data pouring across her monitors. The numbers didn't make sense. They were spiking and plummeting in erratic waves. The arena's AI is pushing beyond its parameters, she said, her tone sharp. It's adapting too fast. If it keeps this up. General Grant, standing rigid beside her, finished her thought. It'll kill them both. Elena slammed her fist on the console, frustration and fear etched across her face. We have to override the system. There's got to be a fail-safe. There isn't, Grant cut in. This was always going to be a test of survival. We can't interfere. Elena's glare could have melted steel. They're not pawns, Marcus. Jax, he's a soldier, Grant said firmly, though his voice softened slightly. And he knows the risks. Back in the arena, the shifting ground suddenly stilled, the silence so profound it made Jax's ears ring. The platforms rearranged themselves into a single circular stage, suspended above the molten abyss. Across from him, Grakthar's stance shifted, his blade gleaming as he raised it in both hands. So we doing this then? Jax asked, his grin faltering as he caught the grim determination in Grakthar's glowing eyes. It appears we have no choice, the alien said. The arena demands a victor. Jax hesitated, then nodded. All right, big guy. Let's give it a show. They squared off, circling each other like predators sizing up their prey. The tension was electric, every muscle in their bodies coiled like springs. Then, without warning, Grakthar charged. The clash of steel echoed across the arena as their blades met, sparks flying with each strike. Jax dodged and weaved, his smaller frame allowing him to slip under Grakthar's powerful swings. But the alien's strength was relentless, each blow forcing Jax closer to the edge of the platform. You're holding back, Jax said, ducking under a particularly vicious strike. Why? Grakthar didn't answer immediately, his glowing eyes narrowing. You are unlike any opponent I have faced. You fight not with strength, but with cunning. It is unsettling. Jax grinned despite himself. Yeah, I get that a lot. But the banter was short-lived. The arena suddenly shuddered, and a beam of light shot down from above, striking the platform's center. The light coalesced into a shimmering sphere, its surface rippling like liquid silver. What the hell is that? Jax asked, shielding his eyes. Grakthar's expression darkened. The arena's core. It chooses the victor. As if on cue, the sphere pulsed, sending out a wave of energy that knocked both combatants off their feet. Jax scrambled to his knees, his mind racing. The core wasn't just observing, it was a judge, jury, and executioner. And it wasn't going to wait for them to finish their duel. We've got to shut it down, Jax said, his voice urgent. Grakthar hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. But how? Jax glanced at the neural interface on his wrist, its lights flickering erratically. Leave that to me. Just keep it distracted. Without another word, he sprinted toward the core, dodging another pulse of energy that left scorch marks on the platform. Grakthar moved to intercept the core's tendrils of energy, his massive frame absorbing the brunt of the attacks. Faster, human! The alien bellowed, his voice strained. I'm working on it. Jax shot back, sliding to a stop in front of the core. He tapped into the neural interface, his thoughts syncing with the arena's systems. It was like diving into a storm, chaotic, disorienting, but not impossible to navigate. Come on, Jax muttered, his fingers dancing over the device's controls. There's got to be an off switch here somewhere. In the observation chamber, Elena watched in breathless silence as Jax worked. He's interfacing with the core, she murmured. But if he makes one mistake, then it's over, Grant said grimly. Jax's vision blurred as the interface flooded his mind with data. The arena's AI resisted, its code writhing like a living thing. But Jax had never been one to back down from a challenge. "Gotcha," he said, finding the core's control center. He initiated a shutdown sequence, his fingers flying across the interface. The core pulsed violently, its light intensifying. Jax staggered back as the energy surged, threatening to consume him. Grakthar leapt to his side, shielding him from the blast. "Finish it!" the alien roared. With a final push, Jax completed the sequence. The core's light flickered, then dimmed. The arena shuddered one last time before falling silent. The crowd erupted into cheers as the arena's walls dissolved, revealing the two warriors standing together, battered but victorious. Jax turned to Grakthar, a grin spreading across his face. "Not bad for a crazy human, huh?" Grakthar inclined his head, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "You have earned my respect, Jax Tanner. And that of my people." In the observation chamber, Elena let out a shaky breath, tears prickling her eyes. "He did it," she whispered. Grant nodded, a rare smile on his lips. "Yeah. He did.